like to start with some words by Dr. Gordon McPherson. He is a pioneer in the urban forestry movement. Did you know there was such a thing? Yeah, it's cool. He says, "The tree in my yard is a word. The trees along my street are a sentence. The trees in my neighborhood are a paragraph. The trees in my city are a story." Dr. Gordon McPherson. Yeah, I'm going to talk about trees. We need trees. Human beings need trees. I believe, as a species, we need trees. And not just because they clean the air and prevent erosion, and they give us shade and fruit and nuts and oxygen. We need trees at a much deeper level. Here's our seventh principle. The respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Trees are part of that web too. They're one of those strands, and we like that strand. Maybe it's because we probably descended from an arboreal species. And there's just some part back in our deep DNA that still yearns for the old home. All I know is that when the trees go away, we get really uncomfortable. We get uncomfortable emotionally and physically. So a couple of years ago, here's an example. A couple of years ago, a windstorm swept through our neighborhood, and it knocked down trees. It twisted them out of the ground. It tossed them on top of cars. It was a mess. And nobody was hurt. That's good. But for weeks afterwards, we just felt unsettled because the light was all wrong. It's just, there's light. There never was light there before. And now our yards looked all sunny and exposed, and we kind of felt vulnerable. That was the emotional part. Here's the physical part. We seem to be better off when we're around trees, and it was recently measured by researchers who looked at communities that had lost their trees suddenly due to emerald ash borer. All right, you all have heard of emerald ash borer? Okay, has it come here yet? Not yet. It'll probably get here. You know, for those of us who aren't familiar, it's a species of beetle. It's invasive, it's not native, and it will kill an ash tree. That's all it wants is an ash tree. And it takes a little time, but it appears like it will kill it in 6 months. Your tree will look okay, and then next thing you know, that tree's dead. It's spreading across North America. And naturally, it hit Detroit the hardest and first. That's my hometown, poor Detroit. Because they had planted lots and lots of ash trees to replace all of the elm trees that had been killed by Dutch elm disease. Okay, so now all those ash trees were big and mature and beautiful, and they were dying in less than a year. Whole neighborhoods went from having a mature canopy to stumps. So you can imagine what that did to the real estate values. But we're talking about Detroit. But then the researchers wanted to go see if there were any other measurable effects. So they went sifting through all the public health records. They figured that they were going to notice an uptick in respiratory illnesses. And sure enough, they did find an increase in asthma in both children and adults. But they also found a sudden increase in cardiovascular disease. Heart attacks increased in those neighborhoods. Other research found that low birth weight in infants were born to women in neighborhoods without trees. These increases were measurable even when controlled for other factors like socioeconomic conditions. This data would suggest that we need trees for our hearts and our babies. That's deep. But I'm going to suggest that we need trees on some other deep levels as well. As Ed told you, I'm currently working as a community minister. I work for a nonprofit that connects people and trees in lots of different ways. We give away free trees for people to plant in their yards, and we host tree identification hikes. And we have volunteer events where people learn how to plant trees. So far, our volunteers have planted over 2 million trees all around Central Texas. Oh, and it's fun. It's just fun. With our help, they learn how to plant great big trees and little bitty saplings, and they get muddy and grubby and sore and happy. They're happy while they're planting trees. It's funny. And they plant trees in parks and schoolyards and along creeks. And we've helped them to reforest the community of Bastrop, Texas. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Bastrop. Bastrop is a little community about 30 miles east of Austin. And in 2011, forest fires swept through and destroyed a very special forest. It began with just a few sparks. It was some malfunctioning equipment. It was nobody's fault. But it spread very quickly because we were in the middle of a drought. And then winds from a tropical storm in the Gulf of Mexico fanned the flames, and they burned fast and hot, and they jumped across roads, and they just spread. The fire greedily burned up all of the brush that had grown up as a result of fire suppression. So instead of just getting the grasses, it ran up the trunks. Ladder fuel is what they call vines. So the fire made more of a destructive, hot, deep difference than if the area had been maintained with natural cycle of fires. And when the fires were finally put out, heavy rains from that tropical storm came and washed any sandy soil that had been held in place by the roots of the trees and the grasses. All that soil washed downhill into the creeks. Hillsides that had been forests were now just strewn with rocks that were freshly cracked open from the heat of the fires. And the creeks were clogged with mud and ashes. At the end of that fire, 34,000 acres were charred and scarred. 1,600 structures were destroyed, homes and businesses and workshops and barns. And 2 men had died. The people were traumatized. People were homeless, pets were lost or dead. Bastrop was traumatized. And people from the surrounding communities poured out their support with money and clothing and food and shelter and all the ways that grace moves through us in the forms of compassion and assistance. Now about those pines, I told you it was a special forest. They were special because they were the westernmost stand of loblolly pine trees. You've heard of loblollies. They grow from the East Coast, from around here, all the way across to East Texas. And then there's a gap of about 150 miles with no pine trees. And then these pine trees, which is why they're called the lost pines. And while they're the same species as the pines further east, they seem to have adapted to higher and drier conditions. Farther west of Bastrop, the soil changes. There are no pine trees until you get to the mountains of New Mexico. So these are special pines, and you might think they're kind of lost. Some scientists think, though, that genetically they're older, so maybe the pines moved east. I'm not sure. But after the fires, the scientists were worried. They knew that a natural pine forest could withstand and maybe even thrive with occasional fires. But they were fearful that this fire had been too hot. It had burned too deep. And they worried that any naturally regenerating pines would not be able to compete with all of the other faster growing species. They feared that grasses and shrubs would take advantage of all the new real estate, which is what they do. And they would crowd out any pine seedlings that might survive. They worried that the natural regrowth might not happen, and if it did, it would never happen well enough to make a real forest again. But here's a twist to the story. Maybe it's part of a happy ending. Several years before the fire, some humans had collected a whole lot of pine seeds from the Bastrop pines. They were going to conduct some research. They would hope to begin to tinker around and figure out how the lost pines were adapted to the higher, drier conditions. And they thought they might be able to breed that trait into some of the eastern pines to help them survive climate change. Y'all remember climate change, right? Just check. That's what's happening as a result of humans burning fossil fuels. Right? We're going to come back to that. So there were all these Bastrop pine seeds, a few million of them, ready for research. And then the economic recession hit and the money dried up. So it got canceled. And all those seeds were just sitting in a refrigerator somewhere in East Texas. And someone had told another someone to just go ahead and throw them in the trash. But then the fires came. And humans, being human, wanted to save the world again. And with these seeds, they could do it. So plans were made, money was raised, and the little seeds were sent out to nurseries to begin growing them into seedlings. And the group I worked for was tasked with getting all those seedlings planted. 5-year plan. Starting in 2012, we've worked with people to plant over 2 million seedlings in Bastrop. And people love the work. People, oh my gosh, crowds of people trying to join us to plant the pine seedlings. It makes them feel like they're actually improving things instead of just continually messing things up. It helps us feel better about being humans. Oh, and those little baby trees are so adorable. And they're so small and they're so vulnerable, and it's a little sad. It's a little sad because we're mimicking nature, and nature isn't always tender. And so that's why we plant so many seedlings, all right? We plant lots and lots of seedlings, and then we ask nature to do the watering. And for the first couple of years, we were still in a drought, so a lot of them die. About 60% die. But the ones that manage to make it are pretty plucky, and they're growing just fine. So that's good news. But here's some other good news. It's the kind that's unexpected. It's the kind that should keep us a little humble. There are some other trees. There are some other pine trees. And they're not there because humans saved them or planted them or really did anything except just not mow them down. And these are young pine trees growing in places that scientists weren't sure that they would ever return to naturally. They're showing up in funny little clumps too, just not the nice 3 feet apart that we teach our volunteers to plant. They're showing up in these little clumps. And they're showing up at the bottoms of hillsides where soil and water collected and allowed them to grow despite the drought. And they're showing up on perfectly flat pieces of land where a few seeds landed and they made a go of it. They're there because that's what nature does. It constantly experiments with making a go of it. Let's see if it'll grow here. How about over here? Pine trees are growing there because it's a nice place. Perhaps they've decided that it's where they belong. even our reforestation expert, our loblolly pine expert, you know there is such a thing, right? He really can't even explain why there are so many trees growing so happily without any human intervention. And I'm not really saying that the human efforts were not needed, that we didn't need to plant trees. No, I'm not saying that, because it's not an either or, it's both and. But this is about resiliency. This is about persistence and showing up. Now here's where I'm going to go and double back around and consider our response to climate change. It's a sort of complex situation that our brains just can't handle really well. So we simplify it all down into dualistic terms of good and bad and right and wrong, because dualistic categorical thinking is so much easier for our brains. Because we feel that if we can categorize something, we'll be safer. We can predict it. And when we're confronted with something as complex as the entirety of our planet's climate, we get overwhelmed. Some of us grow hopeless. And some folks take advantage of that dualistic categorical thinking and they begin yelling about right and wrong and problem and solution because we want to get things simple and safer. And humans want to jump in and control things and be able to predict things and fix things and be good people. We just want to be good. So some of us are planting pine trees to be good people. And that's good. The pine trees don't seem to mind. For all I know, we're just part of their plan. Or maybe those pine trees are just too busy. They're just busy being resilient. They're busy being persistent. They're busy showing up. So that's a really important detail to survival, right? Showing up and joining in. So here we are, in the midst, not the middle, just the midst, of the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Not the crucial part, not the part that will save all the other parts, just a part. And that should feel like a relief to those of us who were worrying that we had to somehow save the whole world. I see, part of the problem with that dualistic, simplistic, binary thinking that comes when we're overwhelmed is that it's also supported by some really old theologies that tell us that we're a problem. That because of an original sin that we've messed up and the whole rest of human existence is going to be spent trying to restore something that was once perfect. That old theology is still underpinning a lot of the rhetoric over climate change on both sides of the good, bad, problem, solution arguments. The upshot is that a whole lot of us are planting pine trees out of some really complicated guilt over being humans. But don't worry, the pine trees don't seem to mind. They're too busy being resilient. They're busy being persistent. They're just too busy showing up. And perhaps that's what we need to do too. We need to simply get busy being resilient. Stay persistent. We need to keep showing up. We can be resilient by acknowledging the complexity and not try to dumb down creation by asking it to fit into binary categories. And we can stay persistent by continuing to explore how deeply we really are interconnected with that web. And we can show up. We can just keep showing up. We can plant trees Or at least not mow down the ones that are making a go of it on their own? This is what it means to recognize the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part, to experience its richness of creation, destruction, and rebirth. Forests, ashes, seedlings. We are not separate from any of it. We are a part of it. Not the middle, just the midst. And it's a nice place. It's the best place for us. It's where we belong. Blessed be. And now we